I stared at the silk ribbon and the handwritten note from my sister asking to put family first. The irony was sharp because my wedding fund had just been drained to $0, and the transaction trail led straight to her venue deposit. She assumes I will stay silent to maintain appearances. She does not realize I have chosen a different kind of attendance, a specific type of presence that ensures the whole room can no longer pretend. My name is Violet Green. I live in Harborstone, South Carolina, a town where the humidity clings to your skin like a second layer of clothing and where politeness is often just a well-painted mask over judgment. I have lived here for nearly all of my 34 years, long enough to know that when a courier arrives at your doorstep with a package wrapped in pearlescent paper and tied with a ribbon thick enough to choke a horse, it is usually a demand disguised as a gift. It was a Tuesday afternoon, specifically 2 o'clock, when the box arrived. I remember the time because I had taken a late lunch break from my remote work setup to make a fresh pot of coffee. The delivery man handed me the package with a grunt, clearly eager to get back into the air conditioning of his truck. I took it into the living room and set it down on the coffee table. The label was written in calligraphy so elaborate it was almost illegible, but I knew who it was from immediately. There was only one person in my life who believed that aesthetic trumped functionality every single time. My sister, Brielle. I untied the satin ribbon. It fell away like a heavy sigh. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in a bed of shredded pink tissue paper, was a collection of items that probably cost more than my monthly car insurance payment. There was a miniature bottle of champagne, a silk robe with the word Maid of Honor embroidered in gold thread on the back, a candle that smelled like expensive vanilla and desperation, and a heavy cardstock note. The handwriting was perfect, looping and confident. Family first. Let us start over. Will you stand by my side? I stared at the note. My fingers brushed against the cool glass of the champagne bottle. For a second, just a split second, I felt a tug of nostalgia. I remembered when we were children, running through the sprinklers in the backyard, before everything became a competition that I was destined to lose. Brielle was getting married. She wanted me there. She wanted me to be her maid of honor. Maybe, I thought, this was her way of extending an olive branch after months of low-contact silence. Maybe she actually wanted her sister, not just a prop for photos. Then my phone buzzed on the couch cushion next to me. It was a notification from my bank app, a standard alert about a low balance warning on my checking account, which was normal for the end of the month before payday. But seeing the bank logo triggered a different thought, a sudden, sharp instinct that had nothing to do with my checking account and everything to do with the heavy feeling in my gut. I picked up my phone. I navigated away from the checking alert and tapped on the savings tab. I needed to see the number. I needed the comfort of that number. It was my wedding fund. I had been building that fund for 5 years. It was not just money. It was 5 years of skipped vacations. It was 5 years of saying no to expensive dinners with friends so I could put an extra $50 away. It was every Christmas bonus I had received since 2020. It was the freelance consulting work I did on weekends until my eyes burned and my back ached. It was $28,450. That was the number. It was the down payment on the venue Ethan and I had looked at. It was the catering for 100 guests. It was the dress. It was my future, neatly organized in a high-yield savings account nicknamed Safe Harbor. The app took a moment to load. The little circle spun round and round. I took a breath, holding the image of that number in my mind. $28,450. The screen refreshed. I blinked. I wiped the screen with my thumb, thinking perhaps there was a smudge obscuring the digits. I blinked again. The air in the room suddenly felt very thin. $12.43. My heart stopped beating. I am sure of it. For a full 3 seconds, my heart simply refused to pump blood. I stared at the number, $12.43. That was impossible. It had to be a glitch. Banks had glitches. Servers went down. Displays malfunctioned. I tapped the transaction history, my fingers trembling so hard I missed the button twice. The history loaded. There was no glitch. There was a series of withdrawals. Not one lump sum, but a cascade of them, all executed over the last 3 days. Transfers to an external account I did not recognize. Payments to vendors. $5,000 to Magnolia Bay Event Hall. $3,000 to Southern Belle Floral Designs. $2,500 to Lux Limousines. $4,000 to specific account ending in 8922. I scrolled down, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The date stared back at me. The first major withdrawal, the one that broke the dam, was dated September 12th. September 12th. The date was burned into my mind because I had seen it on Instagram. That was the day Brielle had posted a photo of herself holding a glass of sparkling wine, standing in front of the grand staircase at Magnolia Bay Event Hall. The caption had been obnoxious and loud. We locked it in. The dream venue is ours. October 14th is going to be magical. She had locked it in on September 12th. My money had left the account on September 12th. I felt like I was going to throw up. The silk robe in the box next to me suddenly looked like a shroud. This account was an old one, a joint account I had opened with my mother, Diane, nearly a decade ago when I was traveling for work and needed someone to have emergency access in case I got stranded overseas. I had forgotten she was still on it. I had forgotten to remove her authorization. I had trusted them. I dialed my mother. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. The ringtone sounded distinct and mocking in the quiet room. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. Hello? Diane's voice was breezy, light. She sounded like she was in the middle of a pleasant afternoon, perhaps gardening or arranging flowers. Mom, I said. My voice sounded wrecked, foreign to my own ears. Mom, the money, my savings, the safe harbor account. Violet. She sounded annoyed, as if I had interrupted something important. Why are you calling in the middle of the day? Is something wrong? The money is gone, I choked out. $28,000. It is gone. The transaction history shows it went to Magnolia Bay. It went to a florist. Mom, did you touch my account? There was a silence on the other end. It was not the silence of shock. It was the silence of calculation. Oh, Violet, she said finally, her tone shifting from breezy to patronizing. You are being so dramatic. You are probably mistaken. You know how you get with numbers. You panic. I am looking at the screen. Mom, I yelled, standing up. The bridesmaid box rattled on the table. It says $5,000 to Magnolia Bay on September 12th. That is Brielle's venue. That is Brielle's deposit. Lower your voice, Diane snapped. Neighbors can hear you. Look, Brielle was in a bind. The venue demanded the deposit immediately, or they were going to give the date to another couple. It was an emergency. We just borrowed it. We were going to tell you. You stole $28,000 to tell me later. I felt the room spinning. That is my wedding fund. Mom, that is mine and Ethan's money. It is family money, she corrected me, her voice icy. I am on the account. Aren't I technically? It is our money, and your sister needed it. She is under so much pressure. Violet, you have no idea how stressful planning a wedding of this magnitude is. You should be happy you could help her secure her dream date. Help her? I whispered. You emptied me out. You left me with $12. Stop exaggerating, Diane said. We will pay it back. Eventually, after the wedding, once the gifts come in, just calm down. Do not make this about you. This is Brielle's time. Do not ruin it with your selfishness. She hung up. I stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dead air. Selfishness. I had worked 60-hour weeks. I had driven a car with a broken air conditioner for 2 summers to save that money, and she called me selfish for wanting to keep it. My phone pinged again. A text message. It was from Brielle. I stared at the screen. Mom said you are freaking out. Don't make drama. Violet, I needed the cash flow for the deposits. I will pay you back when I can. Just come to the wedding and be supportive for once. Family helps family. I looked at the text. Then I looked at the box. The silk robe shone in the afternoon light. The gold letters of maid of honor seemed to wink at me. She stole my future to pay for her party. And then she sent me a box asking me to serve her at that same party. She used my money to buy the flowers I would hold, to rent the floor I would walk on, to pay for the champagne I was supposed to toast her with. She thought she knew me. She thought I was Violet the peacemaker, Violet the doormat. Violet who would cry in her pillow but show up with a smile because she was terrified of making a scene. She was right about one thing. I would show up. I picked up the heavy cardstock note again. Family first. Let us start over. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of tap water because I could not bring myself to open the miniature champagne bottle. That champagne was bought with my money. I sat down and typed a reply to Brielle. My thumbs moved steadily over the glass screen. I did not type what I wanted to type. I did not type, "You are a thief," or "I am calling the police." I typed, "I received the box. It is beautiful. Of course I will be your maid of honor." I hit send. You might think I am insane. You might ask yourself why I did not drive over there and burn her house down, or at least file a police report right that second. You might think I am weak, but you would be wrong. I am not going to ruin her wedding. I am not going to scream and shout and let them paint me as the jealous, unstable younger sister. That is exactly what they expect. That is the narrative they have already prepared. No, I am going to let the wedding happen. I am going to let her walk down the aisle. I am going to let her have her first dance and cut her cake. I will be the perfect sister. I will smile. I will fix her train. I will hold her bouquet. Because the most devastating way to destroy a lie is not to shout at it. It is to let it grow so big, so heavy, and so expensive that it collapses under its own weight. She wants me to be a part of her wedding fine. I will be the most memorable part of it. I looked at the transaction history one last time. Every single dollar she spent was a receipt, and I was going to make sure everyone saw the bill. Ethan Cole is the kind of man who brings you coffee before you even realize you are awake. He is a high school history teacher with a patience that I have always envied and a warmth that feels like a physical weight, grounding me when the rest of the world tries to float away. We had been engaged for 8 months, and unlike the circus my sister was currently conducting, our plans were quiet. We wanted a small ceremony in the backyard of the house we hoped to buy one day. With a local barbecue truck for catering and a playlist, we curated ourselves on a Saturday night with a bottle of cheap red wine. We did not want a performance. We wanted a marriage. That evening, hours after I had discovered the theft, Ethan came home with takeout from our favorite Thai place. He walked through the door, loosening his tie, and smiled at me with that easy, unguarded affection that made my chest ache. I sat on the sofa, the iPad on my lap, my screen dark. I felt like an imposter in my own life. I felt like I was watching him through a sheet of thick, dirty glass. He kissed my forehead and asked about my day. I lied. I told him it was fine. I told him work was busy. I watched him unpack the cartons of pad thai and spring rolls, and I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to close my eyes. He was talking about the guest list, asking if we should invite his cousin from Denver. He was talking about a future that had just been stolen from us, and he did not even know it yet. I work as a senior analyst for Northbridge Risk and Compliance. My job is not glamorous. It involves staring at spreadsheets, tracking discrepancies, and ensuring that corporations are not cutting corners that could lead to lawsuits or federal investigations. It is a career built on skepticism. I am paid to look for the cracks in the foundation. I am paid to notice when the numbers do not add up. The irony that I had failed to apply this same scrutiny to my own personal finances was not lost on me. It burned like acid in my throat. For years, that savings account had been my anchor. In a life that often felt dictated by the whims of my family, that money was the one thing that was purely, engagingly mine. It was the FU fund, the safety net, the promise that if everything fell apart, Violet Green would still be standing. It represented late nights working on audit reports when my eyes were blurring. It represented the vacations I did not take. It was my security blanket. And now it was gone. converted into centerpieces and limousine deposits for a woman who had never worked a 60-hour week in her life. Brielle has always been the star of the Green family show. I suppose every family has one the child who demands the most light, the most air, the most forgiveness. Growing up, Brielle was the one who needed the new dress for the dance, while I was the one who could make do with a hand-me-down. She was the one who needed help with her rent, because she was chasing her dreams, while I was the one who paid my bills on time and was therefore ignored. It was never malicious, or at least that is what I told myself for years. It was subtle. It was a slow erosion of boundaries. It was Brielle borrowing $50 here, $100 there, always with a laugh and a promise to pay me back next Friday. Next Friday never came, and if I ever pressed the issue, our mother, Diane, would step in. She would smooth things over with that maddeningly calm voice, telling me that family helps family, that Brielle was just going through a rough patch, that I should be more understanding because I was the strong one. Being the strong one is a trap. It just means you are the one they feel comfortable hurting because they know you will survive it. The loophole they had exploited was a relic of that very strength. 10 years ago, when I was 24, I had taken a consulting contract in London. It was my first big job. I had opened that high-yield savings account and added my mother as a joint holder. The logic at the time was sound. If I lost my wallet in a foreign country, or if I ended up in a hospital overseas, Diane could wire me money or manage the funds without navigating international bureaucratic red tape. I came back from London. I moved on with my life. I started depositing checks into that account, watching the interest compound, and I forgot. I simply forgot that her name was still attached to the routing number. I forgot that I had left a back door open in the house of my financial security. I never imagined that my own mother would walk through that door, take everything I had built, and hand it to my sister because Brielle needed a fairy tale wedding. I despise conflict. I really do. I am the person who will eat a cold meal at a restaurant rather than send it back to the kitchen. I apologize when people bump into me, but there is a difference between being peaceful and being a victim. I can tolerate annoyance. I can tolerate carelessness. I cannot tolerate being treated like a resource to be mined. Ethan sat next to me on the couch, handing me a fork. He noticed my silence. He is perceptive like that. "Hey," he said softly, bumping his shoulder against mine. "You okay? You seem a million miles away. Is it the budget? Because I was thinking, if the catering quote comes back high, we can cut the open bar to beer and wine only. It is not a big deal." I looked at him. He was willing to compromise on the beer to save a few $100s. Meanwhile, my sister was currently incinerating $28,000 of our money on a venue that cost more than my car. "It is not the bar," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was made of cracked plaster. "I am just tired. The quarterly reports are due next week." "You work too hard," he said, shaking his head. "But hey, it will pay off. Once we get the wedding sorted and put the down payment on the house, you can maybe scale back a bit. We are almost there. V, we are so close." My stomach twisted. We were not close. We were back at the starting line, and I was the only one who knew it. I looked down at my hand. The engagement ring Ethan had given me was modest, a vintage setting with a small, clear diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. It was beautiful because it was real. It was given with love, not taken with entitlement. I stared at the ring, and a dark, cold thought bloomed in my mind. Did my family even want me to have this? Did they look at my happiness and see it not as a joy to be celebrated, but as a surplus to be reallocated to them? My wedding was hypothetical, a someday event that did not really matter. Brielle's wedding was now. Brielle's happiness was urgent. Therefore, my resources were forfeit. It was a utilitarian calculus that stripped me of my personhood and reduced me to a bank balance. They expected me to absorb the blow. That was the most insulting part. They banked on my silence. They knew Violet. Violet would cry. Violet would call Mom. Mom would gaslight Violet. Violet would eventually capitulate because she wanted to keep the peace. They had bet $28,000 on my passivity. I took a bite of pad thai. It tasted like ash. "Ethan," I said, testing the waters, "what would you do if you found out someone you trusted had betrayed you, not cheated, but stole from you?" Ethan chewed thoughtfully. "Depends on who it was, and it depends on if they were sorry." "They are not sorry," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "They think they are entitled to it." Ethan frowned, looking at me with concern. "Is this about work? Did someone take credit for your analysis again?" "Something like that," I said. "Just a hypothetical." I could not tell him. Not tonight. If I told him now, his righteous anger would burn the whole thing down before I was ready. He would call Brielle. He would call Diane. There would be shouting. They would retreat. Play the victim. Hide the money. Or claim it was a gift I had forgotten about, without hard evidence. Without a paper trail so thick it could choke a prosecutor. It would be my word against their united front, and in the court of public opinion, or at least the court of our extended family, Brielle was the princess, and I was the bitter spinster. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be the analyst. Later that night, after Ethan had gone to sleep, I slipped out of bed. I went into the home office and booted up my laptop. The blue light of the screen washed over my face in the dark room. I logged into the bank portal again. My hands were steady now. The shock had faded, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. I was done being the sister. I was done being the daughter. Tonight, I was Northbridge Risk and Compliance. Tonight, I was an auditor. I opened a new spreadsheet. I named it simply The Wedding. I began to download the statements. I did not just look at the last 3 days. I went back 6 months. I wanted to see the pattern. I wanted to see every single time they had tested the fence before they decided to tear it down. I wanted to know if this was an impulse or a campaign. I clicked on the transaction details for the Magnolia Bay deposit. I expanded the metadata. I saw the timestamp. I saw the device ID. I was going to account for every single penny. I was going to build a dossier that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. They wanted a wedding fine. I would give them an accounting of costs they never anticipated. I looked at the cursor blinking in the first cell of my spreadsheet. It was a rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat. 1, 2, 3. I started typing. The numbers on my spreadsheet told a story that was far more sinister than a simple impulse purchase. As I dissected the transaction history late into the night, a pattern emerged that made my stomach turn. This was not a moment of weakness where my mother or sister saw a large balance and panicked to cover a single urgent bill. This was a systematic siphoning. I saw the dates and the amounts, and my analyst brain kicked into overdrive. There was a withdrawal for $2,000 on a Monday. Then, 12 hours later, another for $1,500. Then, the next day, a transfer of $900. They were keeping the amounts relatively low, spaced out just enough to avoid triggering immediate fraud alerts for a large lump sum. It is a technique known in financial crime as structuring, or smurfing, though usually, that is used to avoid federal reporting limits. Here, it was used to avoid me. They were betting that I would not check my balance for a few days, giving them enough runway to drain the account dry before I could put a stop to it. I traced the destinations. The $5,000 to Magnolia Bay was just the headline. There was a $3,000 direct transfer to an account I did not recognize, perhaps a personal checking account belonging to Brielle or her fiancé. There was a $2,000 payment to Gilded Lens Photography. There was a $4,500 charge to a luxury travel agency. They had not just paid for the wedding, they were financing the honeymoon on my dime. The next morning, I drove to the local branch of my bank. I needed to look a human being in the eye. I sat across from a branch manager named Sarah, a woman with kind eyes and a nameplate that looked too heavy for her desk. I showed her my ID. I showed her the printed statement. "I did not make these charges," I said, my voice steady but tight. "I want to know how they were authorized. I have two-factor authentication set up. I should have received a text. I should have received an email." Sarah typed on her keyboard for a long time. The clicking sound was the only noise in the small glass-walled office. She frowned, adjusted her glasses, and clicked again. Ms. Green, she said finally, turning the monitor slightly so I could not see the details but could see her concern. The system shows that these transfers were authorized via a recognized device, a trusted device. That is why the two-factor codes were bypassed for some, or sent to an email that was accessed from that same device. Which device? I asked. It is listed as Diane's iPad Pro, she read. It has been a registered device on this account profile for 6 years. The air left my lungs. My mother's iPad. The one I had bought her for Christmas years ago so she could read her ebooks and play solitaire. The one I had used, probably a dozen times. To quickly check my balance when I was visiting her house for Sunday dinner, I must have clicked "Remember this device" at some point, thinking nothing of it, thinking that my mother's home was a safe place. And the IP address? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Sarah confirmed it. The IP address matched the residential internet service at my mother's address on Elm Street. There were no hackers. There were no identity thieves in a basement in a foreign country. The call was coming from inside the house. I left the bank and drove straight to Elm Street. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I did not call ahead. I knew they would be there. It was Wednesday. Wednesday was the day Brielle usually went over to Mom's to complain about her life and eat a free lunch. I walked into the house without knocking. The familiar smell of lavender potpourri and old wood polish hit me, a scent that used to mean comfort, but now smelled like deceit. They were in the dining room. The table was covered in fabric swatches, shades of blush, champagne, and ivory. Brielle was holding a piece of silk up to the light. Diane was sipping iced tea. They looked up as I entered. They looked so normal, so innocent. "Violet," Mom said, putting down her glass. "We were not expecting you. Did you get the box? Brielle was worried you did not like the color of the robe." I walked up to the table and dropped the bank printouts right on top of the silk swatches. The papers fanned out, covering the delicate fabrics with the harsh black and white reality of their theft. "I went to the bank," I said. Brielle glanced at the papers, then rolled her eyes. She did not flinch. She did not look guilty. She looked annoyed, like I had tracked mud onto a clean carpet. "Oh my God. Violet," Brielle sighed, dropping the silk. "Are we really doing this right now? I have a meeting with the florist at 4. I do not have the bandwidth for your drama." "Drama." I pointed at the highlighted lines. "You took $28,000. You logged in from Mom's iPad. You structured the withdrawals so I wouldn't notice until it was too late. That is not drama." "Brielle, that is grand larceny." "It is not larceny," Brielle snapped, her voice rising to that shrill pitch she always used when she was losing an argument. "It is a reallocation of family resources. You are sitting on that money, doing nothing with it. I am getting married. This is the most important day of my life. Do you have any idea how expensive everything is? The venue raised their prices. The caterer demanded a rush fee. What was I supposed to do? Cancel? Humiliate myself?" "Yes," I shouted. "If you cannot afford it, you cancel it. You do not steal from your sister." "I did not steal," she screamed back. "I borrowed it. I have money coming in. Caleb is getting a bonus at the end of the year. We will pay you back. Why are you acting like you were robbed at gunpoint? You have a good job. You have a 401k. You are fine. Stop acting like a victim." I looked at my mother. Diane was arranging the swatches, smoothing them out where my papers had wrinkled them. She refused to meet my eyes. "Mom," I said, "you let her do this. It was your device." Diane finally looked up. Her expression was one of weary disappointment, directed entirely at me. "Violet, please. Your sister was desperate. She came to me crying. She was going to lose the date. What is a mother supposed to do? I told her she could use the account. I thought you would understand. I thought you would want to help." "You thought I would want to help," I repeated, my voice shaking. "By giving her my entire wedding fund, by giving her the money Ethan and I worked for." "You and Ethan are not even really planning anything yet," Diane said dismissively. "You guys are slow. Brielle is happening now. It is a matter of timing. When your turn comes, We will figure something out. But right now, we need to focus on Brielle. Do not be selfish. Violet, do not ruin this for her. There it was again, selfish. The word they used as a bludgeon every time I tried to exist as an independent person. I looked at them. I looked at the fabric swatches bought with my sweat. I looked at the sister who felt entitled to my labor and the mother who enabled her. I realized then that they did not see me as a person. They saw me as a resource. I was an asset to be liquidated when necessary. I am not the one ruining it, I said quietly. You did that when you decided my life mattered less than your party. I turned and walked out. I could hear Brielle complaining about my attitude before the door even closed. I drove home in a daze. When I walked into our apartment, Ethan was waiting. He took one look at my face and knew. I told him everything. I told him about the structuring, the iPad, the confrontation. I watched his face go through the stages of grief in real time: confusion, disbelief, then a white-hot, terrifying rage. I am calling the police, Ethan said, reaching for his phone. I am calling them right now. This is theft. I don't care who they are. They are going to jail. No, I said. Ethan stopped, staring at me. Violet, they stole $30,000. We cannot let them get away with this. I know, I said, sinking onto the sofa. But if you call the police now, it becomes a mess. Mom will say she authorized it because her name is on the account. It is a civil matter, not criminal, because of that joint status. The police will write a report and walk away. And then, I took a breath, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. And then everyone will know. Know what? Ethan asked. That your family is a pack of thieves. That I was stupid enough to let them, I whispered. It was a twisted, irrational feeling, but I felt an overwhelming sense of shame. I felt dirty. I felt like a fool who had walked into a trap that everyone else could see. I was ashamed that I came from people who would eat their own young. I was ashamed that I had to look at the man I loved and tell him that because of my family. We were back to zero. I have to cancel the consultation with the caterer, I said, staring at the floor. And we cannot put the deposit down on the rental house next month. We do not have the liquidity. Ethan sat down next to me. He took my hand. His grip was tight. Violet, I don't care about the rental house. I care about you. I care that they are hurting you. I know, I said. But we have to be smart. If I blow this up now, they win. They play the victim. They tell everyone I am the jealous sister trying to sabotage the wedding because I am bitter. They have already started that narrative. Brielle is already spinning it. I looked at the engagement ring on my finger. It felt heavier than it had yesterday. I realized that for the first time in my life, I was truly alone with Ethan. My family was not a support system. They were a liability. I am going to get the money back, I told him. But I am going to do it my way. I am going to let them spend it. I am going to let them think they got away with it. And then I am going to pull the rug out when they are standing on it in their high heels. Ethan looked at me. He saw the coldness in my eyes, a reflection of the calculation I had seen in my mother's kitchen. He nodded slowly. Okay, he said. We do it your way. That night, I sent emails to the 3 vendors we'd been tentatively talking to for our own wedding. I typed the words, indefinite postponement, 3 times. Each time, it felt like cutting off a finger, but with each email sent, the resolve in my chest hardened. I was not just postponing a wedding, I was preparing for a war. If I stayed silent now, if I let them absorb this money and pat me on the head and tell me to be a good sister, I would never be free. They would take the house money next, then the college fund for the children we did not even have yet. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I could visualize the spreadsheet in my mind. Every row was a bullet. Every timestamp was a weapon. They wanted a perfect wedding. I would make sure they got exactly what they paid for. And I would make sure everyone knew exactly who footed the bill. The shame was gone. It had been replaced by something much more useful. Focus. 2 days after the confrontation in my mother's dining room, I received an email from Brielle. The subject line was not, "I am sorry," or "payment plan proposal." It was titled, in all capital letters, "Maid of Honor Duties and Timeline." I opened the attachment. It was a 4-page color-coded PDF document. It listed every single expectation she had for me between now and the wedding date. It included dress fittings, a bachelorette weekend itinerary, bridal shower logistics, and a mandatory crafting schedule for the centerpieces. But the most audacious part was the note typed in bold Comic Sans font at the very bottom of the first page. It read, "I know things have been tense, but I am willing to move past it if you are. Step up for me. Help me pull this off. And we can call the money thing even. Consider it your wedding gift to me. Let us be sisters again." I stared at the screen until the pixels started to blur. She was framing her theft as a transaction. In her warped reality, taking $28,000 from me was not a crime. It was an advance payment for my services as her personal assistant. She was not apologizing. She was invoicing me for the privilege of being related to her. I printed the document. The paper felt warm in my hands. I walked into the living room where I had set up a makeshift war room on the coffee table. My phone rang. It was Brielle. I answered on the second ring. "Did you get the schedule?" she asked. There was no hesitation in her voice, no tremor of guilt. She sounded brisk, efficient, like a CEO checking in with a subordinate. "I am looking at it now," I said. "Good," she said. "Listen, Violet, I know you were upset the other day. Mom said you were really spiraling, but I've been thinking about it, and this is actually a great opportunity for you. You get to be the maid of honor. You get to be right there next to me. Most sisters would kill for that kind of involvement. So, if you do a good job, if you really show up for me, I think we can just wash our hands of the financial stuff. You help me have my dream day, and I forgive you for making a scene in front of Mom. Deal." I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, staring at it with morbid fascination. She was forgiving me. She had twisted the narrative so completely that in her mind, my reaction to being robbed was the offense, and her robbery was simply a misunderstanding that she was gracious enough to overlook. "You want me to work off the debt you created by stealing my money," I stated flatly. "Don't be crass," she snapped. "It is not working it off. It is being a sister. It is knowing your role. Look, do you want to be in the wedding or not? Because if you are going to sulk in the corner, tell me now so I can ask Cousin Sarah. She has been dying to be asked." "I will do it," I said. "Great," she chirped, her mood instantly flipping back to sunny. "First fitting is Saturday at 10 in the morning. Do not be late, and bring your credit card. They need a card on file for alterations." She hung up. I sat there in the silence. A moment later, my mother called, as if they were coordinating their attack in shifts. "Brielle tells me you agreed," Diane said. Her voice was dripping with that specific brand of maternal relief that always made me feel like I was 10 years old and had just apologized for something I did not do. "I am so proud of you, Violet. I knew you would come around. Family is the most important thing. You have to learn to let go of material things. Money comes and goes, but your sister is forever." "She told me to consider the theft my wedding gift," I said. "She is just trying to make peace," Diane soothed. "She is under a lot of stress. You know how she gets. Just play along. Honey, for me, if you make a fuss now, you will just look petty. Everyone knows weddings are expensive. If you try to ask for that money back now, people will just think you are jealous that she beat you to the altar. You do not want that reputation." I hung up on her too. Diane had inadvertently revealed their strategy. It was a containment maneuver, by inviting me to be the maid of honor, by forcing me into the inner circle. They were effectively neutralizing me. If I was standing next to Brielle at the altar, wearing the dress, holding the flowers, I could not also be the person suing her. I could not be the victim if I was participating in the celebration. They were banking on the social contract. They knew I would not cause a scene in front of our extended family. They knew I would not let Aunt Martha or Grandma Betty see me fight with the bride. They were trapping me in a cage of politeness. When Ethan came home that evening, I showed him the list. He read it, his face darkening with every line. When he got to the "call it even" note, he threw the paper onto the table. "No," he said firmly. "Absolutely not. Violet, you cannot do this. This is abusive. They rob you, and then they demand you serve them. We are cutting them off. Right now. Block their numbers. We will file the lawsuit. We will send the police to the wedding if we have to. But you are not going to be her slave." "I have to," I said. "Why?" Ethan demanded, pacing the small living room. "Why do you have to? Because of some misplaced sense of loyalty, they do not have loyalty to you. They ate your savings account. Violet, they ate our house. It is not loyalty," I said. I stood up and walked over to the wall where I had taped up the timeline of withdrawals I had created. "It is access." Ethan stopped pacing. He looked at me, really looked at me. "What do you mean? If I cut them off now, they close ranks," I explained, my voice cold and precise. "Mom claims it was a misunderstanding. Brielle claims it was a gift. They hide the receipts. They delete the emails. They claim I authorized it verbally. It becomes a mess of he said, she said. But if I am the maid of honor, I am inside." I picked up a marker and circled the date of the bachelorette party. "If I am the maid of honor, I have access to her planning binder," I continued. "I have access to her vendor contracts to coordinate logistics. I will be in her house, in her email, organizing her life. I want to know exactly how she did it. I want to know if she forged my signature on anything. I want to see the invoices. I want to know if there are other accounts she tapped into. I want to know if she opened credit cards in my name that I haven't found yet." Ethan stared at me. He looked slightly frightened, which I supposed was a fair reaction. He had never seen me like this. He was used to the soft Violet, the Violet who cried during insurance commercials. He had never met the Violet who did risk assessment for a living. "You are going to spy on them," he said. "I am going to conduct an audit," I corrected him. "And when I have everything, every receipt, every lie, every forged signature, I am going to present my findings. Not in a private email. Not in a quiet conversation in the kitchen." "Violet," Ethan warned. "What are you planning?" "I am planning to be the best maid of honor she has ever seen," I said. The next 3 weeks were a blur of humiliation. I played my part perfectly. I showed up at the bridal boutique at 10 in the morning on the dot. I stood on the pedestal in a chiffon dress that cost $300, which I had to pay for with my own credit card because Brielle forgot her wallet in the car. I smiled while the seamstress pinned the hem. I told Brielle she looked beautiful in her gown, a gown that cost $6,000. My $6,000. Brielle was radiant with power. She treated me like a hired hand. "Violet, go get me a latte, oat milk, sugar-free vanilla," she would command while we were meeting with the photographer. "And pay for it, will you? I am saving my cash for the tip envelopes. Violet, call the limo company and confirm the pickup times. And ask if they can upgrade us to the stretch Hummer for free. Use your customer service voice. You are good at that. Violet, I need you to address these 200 envelopes by Friday. My handwriting is too messy." She was testing me. She was pushing every button she could find, waiting for me to snap. She wanted me to explode so she could point a finger and say, "See? She is crazy. She is ruining my moment." But I did not snap. I bought the latte. I called the limo company. I addressed the envelopes until my hand cramped and my fingers were stained with ink. And with every task, I gathered intelligence. When she asked me to confirm the photographer, she forwarded me the original contract because she was too lazy to look up the phone number herself. I saved the attachment. It showed that she had paid the deposit 2 hours after a withdrawal of $2,000 from my account. When she sent me to her house to pick up her vision board for the florist, she gave me the key. I went in. I found the folder of receipts she kept in her desk drawer. I took photos of every single one. I found a receipt for a pair of diamond earrings from a jeweler in the mall, dated the same day as a cash withdrawal of $800. She had bought herself jewelry with my wedding fund. I found something else. 2. I found a credit card statement on her kitchen counter. It was a card I did not recognize, issued in the name of Brielle Green, but the billing address was my old apartment, the one I had moved out of 3 years ago. She had opened a card using my previous address to hide the statements, but somehow, this one had made its way to her. I took a picture of that. 2. I would run a full credit check on myself as soon as I got home. Brielle was so confident. That was her fatal flaw. She believed her own press. She truly believed that because I was quiet, I was defeated. She believed that because I was handing her pins and fluffing her veil, I had accepted my role as the financier of her happiness. She forgot that I was the one who balanced the books for a living. One afternoon, while we were at the venue for a final walkthrough, Brielle turned to me. We were standing in the middle of the ballroom under a massive crystal chandelier. "You know," she said, looking around with a satisfied sigh, "I was really worried you were going to be a problem, Violet, but you have actually been great. Mom was right. You just needed to get over the initial shock. I mean, look at this place. Isn't it worth it? Isn't it worth a little sacrifice to see your sister this happy?" I looked at her. I looked at the smug curve of her lips. I looked at the way she stood there, claiming ownership of a room she had not paid for. "It is breathtaking, Brielle," I said. My voice was smooth, devoid of any edge. "It is going to be a day no one will ever forget." "Exactly," she beamed, oblivious to the double meaning. "That is all I wanted, a day where everything is perfect." She walked away to yell at the event coordinator about the napkin folds. I stayed under the chandelier. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the ballroom. I added it to the digital folder I had named Evidence. That night, I stood in front of the mirror in my bathroom. I washed the makeup off my face. I looked tired. There were dark circles under my eyes from the late nights spent cross-referencing timestamps and building my case, but there was something else in my reflection, too. There was a hardness that had not been there a month ago. The soft, accommodating Violet was gone. She had been bought and paid for, consumed by the wedding industrial complex of Brielle Green. The woman staring back at me was someone new. "You want a stage, Brielle," I whispered to the empty room. "You want everyone to look at you. You want to be the center of attention." I picked up my toothbrush. "You will get your stage," I said, "and I will make sure the spotlight is bright enough to show every single crack." I had enough evidence now to go to the police. I had enough to go to a lawyer. But a lawsuit would take months. A police report would be buried in paperwork. No. Justice needed to be served where the crime was committed. She stole my money to buy an audience. It was only fair that I use that same audience to deliver the verdict. I rinsed my face and went to bed. I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. I had my plan. The investigation was concluding. The trial was scheduled for Saturday, October 14th, at 6 o'clock in the evening, and the defendant had no idea she was about to take the stand. The dining room table in my apartment had ceased to be a place for eating. It had transformed into a command center. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like a chaotic scattering of papers, but to me, it was a precise architectural blueprint of theft. I had created a master spreadsheet that would have made my boss at Northbridge Risk and Compliance weep with pride. It was color-coded, cross-referenced, and absolutely damning. Column A listed the withdrawals from my savings account, the dates they occurred, and the exact timestamps down to the second. Column B listed the vendor bookings for Brielle's wedding, obtained through my newfound privilege of being the maid of honor. Column C was the smoking gun, the correlation coefficient. It was not just that the numbers were similar, they were identical. On September 12th at 10 in the morning, $5,000 left my account. On September 12th at 10:45 in the morning, a deposit of $5,000 was recorded on the invoice for Magnolia Bay Event Hall. On September 15th, $2,000 was transferred to a checking account. On September 15th, later that afternoon, Gilded Lens Photography received a retainer fee of exactly $2,000. It went on like this, line after line, the floral deposit, the catering down payment, the string quartet. My sister had not just dipped into a pot of money, she had treated my life savings like a real-time debit card. She was not even trying to hide the amounts. She was simply laundering the money through her own checking account and sending it straight out the door before the ink was even dry. The access I had as maid of honor was the key that unlocked the final doors. Brielle, true to form, was lazy. She did not want to deal with the minutiae of vendor coordination. She wanted the glory of the wedding without the administrative headache. So, 2 days after I agreed to be in the bridal party, she granted me access to her wedding planning email account. "Just keep an eye on it," she had told me, handing over the password on a sticky note. "Make sure the vendors are replying. I do not have time to chase people." She had handed me the murder weapon. I spent 3 nights sifting through every email in that inbox. I did not delete anything. I did not mark anything as unread. I simply forwarded every single invoice, every confirmation, and every receipt to a secure, external hard drive I had purchased specifically for this purpose. That was when I found the email from Paradise Getaways. I had assumed, perhaps naively, that my money had gone to the wedding itself, the venue, the food, the things guests would see. I had convinced myself that in her twisted logic, Brielle felt these things were essential for the family image. But the email from the travel agent shattered that illusion. The subject line read, "Confirmation Street. Lucia, honeymoon upgrade." I opened it, my hand hovering over the mouse. The booking was for 7 nights at a 5-star resort. That was standard enough. But then I looked at the line items. Upgrade to oceanfront butler suite, $1,800. Private candlelight beach. Dinner, $400. Couples massage. Package, $600. Helicopter transfer from airport, $550. The total for these extras came to over $3,000. I checked my spreadsheet. On the day this invoice was paid, there was a withdrawal from my savings account for $3,500. She was not just borrowing money to save face or secure a venue. She was stealing my money to pay for a butler. She was stealing my money to get a massage. She was stealing my money to take a helicopter ride while I was driving a sedan with a rattling muffler. This was not desperation. This was greed. Pure, unadulterated entitlement. She wanted to live like a celebrity, and she had decided I was the production studio funding the film. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest, heavy and solid like a stone. I printed the email. I printed the bank withdrawal slip. I stapled them together. The next day, I went back to the bank. I did not go to the branch manager this time. I went to the teller line and asked for a specific request, a full audit trail of the login sessions for the past month. I wanted to know not just the device, but the duration of the sessions. The teller, a young man named David, looked at my account history and frowned. "Ms. Green," he said, lowering his voice, "I see a lot of activity here from a secondary device, an iPad. It looks like the sessions are short. Log in, transfer, log out. Usually less than 2 minutes. Is that normal?" I asked. "For a user checking a balance, yes," he said. "For someone moving thousands of dollars repeatedly, it triggers our internal flags. But because the device was whitelisted years ago, the system let it through. However," he paused, turning the screen slightly, "if you did not authorize these specific transfers, you can file a fraud affidavit. It initiates a dispute. We freeze the funds, or attempt to reverse them, while we investigate unauthorized access." "Even if the person had the password?" I asked. "If the access exceeded the scope of authorization," David said, reciting what sounded like a textbook definition. "Just because someone has a key to your house does not mean they are allowed to sell your furniture." "I see," I said. "I need to think about the affidavit, but can you print the session logs for me?" He printed them. I added them to the folder. I needed one more thing. I needed her to say it. I needed her to confirm, in writing, that she knew exactly what she was doing. I could not rely on a he said, she said scenario where she claimed I had verbally gifted her the honeymoon upgrade. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and opened my text messages. I composed a message to Brielle. I kept it short. I kept it devoid of emotion. I used the gray rock method, being as uninteresting and flat as a rock, so the narcissist projects their own feelings onto you. Me. Hey Brielle, I am looking at the budget for the shower. Just wondering, how are you handling the final payments for the venue? Do you need me to call them? I waited. It was a trap. If she said she had already paid it, she was admitting knowledge of the payment. 3 minutes later, 3 dots appeared. Brielle, don't worry about the venue. I took care of it last week. Just focus on the shower favors. I screenshotted it. Me. Okay, that was a big payment. 5,000. Right. Good that you had it covered. I held my breath. This was the push. Brielle. Yeah, well, thank God for family resources. Right, Mom said it was fine to use the reserve. We will sort the details later. Just make sure the shower's nice. I want those specific macarons. Thank God for family resources. Mom said it was fine to use the reserve. She had just admitted 2 things. 1, that she knew the source of the money. 2, that she and Mom had discussed it as a reserve, implying they knew it was not theirs, but felt entitled to commandeer it. She did not say thank you for the gift. She said, we will sort the details later. That was admission of a debt, however vague. I screenshotted it. I backed it up to the cloud. I emailed it to myself. I drove home, feeling like I was carrying a nuclear bomb in my passenger seat. When I walked in, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He looked pale. Violet, he said, not looking up. Come look at this. I dropped my bag and walked over. Ethan had signed us up for a credit monitoring service earlier that week, insisting that if they were willing to drain a bank account, they might not stop there. What is it? I asked, looking at the graph on the screen. Your credit score dropped 12 points, he said. It is not a massive crash, which is why you did not get an alert immediately. But look at the inquiries. He pointed to a section titled Hard Inquiries. There was an inquiry from a department store credit card issuer dated 2 weeks ago, and another inquiry from a home goods financing company dated 3 days ago. They did not open the accounts, Ethan said, his voice tight. At least, not successfully. It looks like they got rejected because of some security freeze or address mismatch, maybe because you moved. But they tried. Violet, someone tried to open a credit card in your name to buy furniture. I stared at the screen. The date of the furniture inquiry coincided with a text I had received from Mom asking for my current zip code for a wedding invitation. Even though she knew where I lived, she had been trying to bypass the address verification. They are trying to leverage my credit, I whispered. The cash wasn't enough. They want to put me in debt. This is identity theft, Ethan said. This is not a family dispute anymore. This is a felony. I know, I said. I walked back to my bag and pulled out the folder. I placed the bank logs, the email regarding the butler suite, and the screenshots of Brielle's texts on the table next to Ethan's laptop. I have the evidence, I said. I have the timeline. I have the admission. And now we have proof of attempted credit fraud. Ethan looked at the pile. So, do we call the police now? Not yet, I said. The police will arrest them, yes. But the police cannot get my money back before the wedding. The police cannot undo the wire transfers to St. Lucia. If Brielle gets arrested, the money is frozen or lost in legal fees. I need the money back. Ethan, I need our future back. I picked up my phone. I searched for a name I had been given by a colleague at Northbridge, a woman known for being a shark in civil litigation, someone who specialized in financial recovery and family disputes. I am calling a lawyer, I said. Not a criminal defense lawyer, a civil litigator. I am going to sue her. I am going to attach her assets. I am going to garnish her wages. And I am going to serve her with the papers when she least expects it. I dialed the number for the law offices of Holt and Mercer. Holt and Mercer, how may I direct your call? A pleasant voice answered. I would like to schedule a consultation with Marianne Holt, I said. My voice steady, my hand resting on the stack of evidence that proved my sister loved a butler service more than she loved me. It is regarding a significant theft of personal funds and financial fraud. I have the documentation ready. And what is the nature of the relationship between the parties? The receptionist asked. Sister, I said. And mother. I see, the voice said, the tone shifting to something sharper, more professional. Can you come in tomorrow at 9? I will be there, I said. I hung up. The sun was setting outside, casting long shadows across the room. I looked at the maid of honor duties list still pinned to my refrigerator. Task 4, pick up bridal shoes. Task 5, confirm seating chart. I took a pen and wrote a new task at the bottom. Task 6, destroy them. The office of Holt and Mercer Legal Advocacy was located on the 4th floor of a brick building downtown, the kind of place that smelled of mahogany, old paper, and billable hours. It was a stark contrast to the chaotic, glitter-bombed atmosphere of my sister's wedding preparations. Here, there were no tool swatches or panic attacks about font choices. There was only the quiet, terrifying hum of consequences. Marianne Holt was a woman who looked like she could dismantle a corporation with a single raised eyebrow. She was in her 50s, wearing a sharp charcoal suit, and she listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting once. I laid it all out, the joint account, the systematic withdrawals, the vendor cross-references, the honeymoon upgrade email, and the text messages where Brielle admitted to using the family resources. When I finished, Marianne took a sip of water and looked at the spreadsheet I had placed in front of her. This is thorough, she said. Her voice was dry and precise. Most clients come in here with a shoebox of crumpled receipts and a lot of crying. You have brought me a forensic audit. I do risk compliance for a living, I said. My hands clasped tightly in my lap to stop them from shaking. I need to know where I stand. My mother is on the account. They are saying that makes it family money. They are saying I cannot touch them. Marianne leaned forward. That is a common misconception. A joint account grants access. Yes, it means the bank will not stop her from withdrawing the funds, but it does not grant ownership of the funds, especially if you can prove the source of the deposits was 100% you. And it certainly does not grant the right to misappropriate funds for personal gain without the other party's consent. It is called conversion. In layman's terms, it is civil theft. She pulled a legal pad closer. We have a few avenues, she continued, drawing 3 distinct lines. First, the bank. You file a fraud affidavit. You stated the device used was authorized in the past, but the specific transactions were not. This triggers an internal investigation. The bank will freeze the account, though. There is not much left to freeze, and they will reach out to the other account holder. That is your mother. I nodded. And the second? A formal demand letter, Marianne said. We send a certified letter to your sister and your mother. We outline the total amount taken, $28,450. We give them a strict deadline, say, 7 business days to return the funds in full. If they fail to do so, we file a civil lawsuit for the principal amount, plus interest, plus legal fees, and potentially punitive damages for the emotional distress and the credit fraud attempt. And the third? I asked, dreading the answer. Criminal charges, she said calmly. Grand larceny, given the amount and the evidence of structuring to avoid detection. A prosecutor might be interested. However, family cases are messy. District attorneys often hate them because witnesses recant. They beg for the charges to be dropped once Thanksgiving rolls around. I looked out the window. Down on the street, people were walking to lunch, living normal lives where their sisters did not steal their futures. I do not want to destroy her life, I said quietly. I do not want her to go to prison. And the wedding, if I file criminal charges now, or if I sue her publicly right now, the wedding is over. The vendors will pull out if they hear about fraud. The guests will gossip. It will be a circus. I looked back at Marianne. Am I terrible for wanting my money back but not wanting to be the person who burns down her wedding day? Everyone keeps telling me that if I do this, I am the villain. I am the one ruining the family. Marianne set her pen down. She looked at me with a gaze that was surprisingly compassionate, though still steely. Violet, she said, imagine you are standing in a rainstorm. Your sister and your mother are standing next to you. You are holding a giant umbrella over them. You are getting soaked. You are cold. You are shivering. But you keep holding the umbrella because they are dry and happy. And they keep telling you how great it is that they are dry. If you close the umbrella, they will get wet. They will scream that you made them wet. But did you make the rain? No. You just stopped protecting them from the weather they created. She leaned back. You are not tearing down her wedding. She built her wedding on a foundation of theft. If that foundation crumbles, that is gravity, not malice. You are simply refusing to hold the umbrella anymore. The metaphor landed in my chest with the force of a physical blow. I had been holding that umbrella my entire life. File the affidavit, I said, and send the letter. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in compartmentalization. I went to work. I did my job. I answered Brielle's texts about the seating chart with polite, one-word answers, and in the background, the machinery of justice began to turn. I went to the bank and formally submitted the fraud packet. The manager looked grave as he accepted the documents. He told me the investigation would take 30 to 60 days. But the initial inquiry would start immediately. That meant my mother would be getting a phone call from the fraud department very soon. Then, the demand letter went out. Marianne sent it via overnight courier. Signature required. I knew exactly when it arrived because I was tracking the delivery number on my phone while I was in a meeting at work. Delivered Thursday, 10:14 in the morning, signed for by B. Green. My phone rang at 10:20. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, and again. Then the text started. Brielle. What is this? Brielle. Are you insane? Brielle. Pick up the phone right now, Violet. Brielle. You got a lawyer. I waited until my lunch break. I walked out to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and took a deep breath. Then I called her back. You have some nerve. Brielle screamed the moment the call connected. She did not say hello. She just launched into a sonic assault. I am holding a letter from a law firm threatening to sue me for $30,000. Are you out of your mind? I'm getting married in 2 weeks. I know when you are getting married, I said, my voice calm. I paid for it. You are ruining everything, she shrieked. I told you I would pay you back. I told you we would figure it out. Why would you bring a lawyer into this? Do you know how humiliating this is? Caleb was standing right there when the courier came. He asked what it was, and I had to lie and say it was the marriage license paperwork. That sounds stressful, I said. You have 7 days. Brielle, the letter explains it. If the money is not returned to the account by next Thursday, the lawsuit gets filed with the county court. It becomes public record. I don't have $28,000, she yelled. It is spent. The caterer has it. The florist has it. What do you want me to do? Rob a bank. You already robbed a bank, I said. You robbed the bank of Violet. Figure it out. Brielle, ask Caleb, ask his parents, sell the dress, cancel the honeymoon upgrade. I don't care. You are a monster, she spat. Mom is going to hear about this. Good, I said. She got a letter too. I hung up. My heart was pounding, but it was a good kind of pounding. It was the adrenaline of finally fighting back. 10 minutes later, Diane called. Her approach was different. She did not scream. She wept. Violet, she sobbed. I just signed for a letter. I don't understand. It says I am liable. It says I committed fraud. How could you do this to your own mother? I changed your diapers. I paid for your braces. You authorized the theft of my life savings, I said. The braces were 20 years ago. Mom, that doesn't give you a lifetime pass to loot my bank account. We were going to pay you back, she wailed. Why does everything have to be so formal? Why couldn't we just discuss this at Sunday dinner? Now I have to tell your father. He doesn't know. Violet. He thinks we paid for the help with the wedding out of my retirement fund. If he finds out, maybe he will wonder why his wife and daughter are thieves, I said. Do not use that word, Diane snapped. Her sadness instantly replaced by anger. We are family. You are making us look like criminals. If the shoe fits, I said. The deadline is Thursday. Mom, talk to Brielle. Between the two of you, you managed to spend it. I am sure between the two of you, you can find a way to replace it. You are not invited to Sunday dinner, she said, her voice trembling with indignation. I didn't plan on coming, I said. I will be busy meeting with my lawyer. I hung up on her, too. That evening, I went back to Marianne's office to debrief. I told her about the calls. I told her about the panic. They are scared, Marianne said, nodding with satisfaction. Good. Fear makes people reveal things. But here's the reality. Violet, they are not going to pay you by Thursday. They likely do not have the liquidity. They spent your money because they didn't have their own. So we file the lawsuit, I asked. We draft it, Marianne said. We have it ready to go, but we have to be strategic about when we serve them. If we serve them next week, right before the wedding, they might try to postpone. They might claim distress. They might try to hide assets or guilt trip you into dropping it by using the wedding guests as leverage. She tapped her pen on the desk. You said your father doesn't know. No, I said. Mom admitted it. He thinks the money came from her retirement. He is a proud man. He would be mortified if he knew his daughter was funding her wedding with stolen money. Interesting, Marianne murmured. And the groom Caleb? He doesn't know the extent of it, I said. Brielle lied to him about the letter today. She is keeping him in the dark to protect her image. So, Marianne said, a small, sharp smile playing on her lips, we have a bride who is lying to her groom and a mother who is lying to her husband, and all of them are gathered in one place on October 14th. You want to serve them at the wedding? I asked, my eyes widening. I want to serve them when they cannot run, Marianne corrected. And more importantly, I want to serve them when the assets are present. Weddings are full of gifts, envelopes of cash, checks from relatives. If we win a judgment, those assets are fair game. She looked at me. But more than that, Violet, serving them there prevents them from spinning the story. If we serve them privately next week, they will spend the wedding day whispering to every aunt and uncle that you are crazy, that you are suing them for no reason, that you are the villain. They will control the narrative. But if the process server walks in, I started. If the process server walks in while you are giving a speech, Marianne said, or right after, then the truth walks in with him. They cannot lie when the paperwork is being handed to them in front of witnesses. It is the nuclear option. Violet, are you ready for that? I thought about the empty space in my bank account. I thought about the honeymoon upgrade. I thought about Brielle calling me a monster for wanting my own money back. I thought about the umbrella I had been holding for 34 years. I don't want to just serve them, I said, my voice hardening. I want to make sure the truth is the only guess that matters. Then we wait, Marianne said. Let the deadline pass. Let them think you are bluffing. Let them think you got cold feet. Let them get comfortable. And then, on the 14th, we close the umbrella, I finished. Precisely, Marianne said. I left her office and walked out into the cool evening air. I took out my phone and opened the family group chat, which had been silent since the phone calls. I typed one message. I am done arguing. Any further communication regarding finances must be directed to my legal counsel. Marianne Holt. See you at the rehearsal dinner. I hit send. Then I muted the chat. Let them panic. Let them scramble. I had a speech to write. The phone call from the bank's fraud department came on a Tuesday morning, shattering the fragile peace I had managed to construct over the weekend. I was sitting at my desk at Northbridge, trying to focus on a risk assessment for a mid-sized logistics firm, when my cell phone vibrated. The caller ID displayed the generic toll-free number of my bank, but the voice on the other end was specific, human, and grave. Ms. Green, the investigator said. His name was Mr. Henderson, and he sounded like a man who had seen every variation of financial betrayal imaginable. I am following up on the affidavit you submitted regarding the unauthorized transfers from your savings account. We have completed the initial digital forensic review of the access logs. And, I asked, gripping my pen so hard, the plastic barrel creaked. You confirmed it was the iPad. We confirmed the device. Yes, Henderson said. But we found something else, something that complicates the narrative of a simple unauthorized access. For the transfer dated September 12th, the $5,000 transfer, our system triggered a secondary security challenge. A 6-digit code was sent via text message to the mobile number on file ending in 4412. My stomach dropped. That was my mother's cell phone number. The code was entered correctly 14 seconds after it was generated, Henderson continued. Ms. Green, this suggests that the person authorizing the transfer had physical possession of both the iPad and the mobile phone associated with the account holder. Diane Green, this was not a passive login. This was an active, 2-step verification. I closed my eyes. For weeks, I had clung to a shred of hope that perhaps Brielle had stolen Mom's iPad while Mom was in the garden, that perhaps Mom was just negligent and not complicit. But you do not accidentally receive a fraud alert text, read the code, and type it into a banking app in 14 seconds unless you are fully aware of what you are doing. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice sounding hollow. Please proceed with the investigation. I hung up and stared at the gray fabric of my cubicle wall. It was not just Brielle, it was a conspiracy. My mother had not just looked the other way, she had unlocked the door. I drove to my mother's house that evening. I did not go inside. I parked at the curb, leaving the engine running, and called her. I saw the curtain in the living room twitch. Violet, she answered, her voice tight. I thought you were only speaking to us through that lawyer now. I know about the text code. Mom, I said. I did not scream. I did not cry. I just stated the fact. The bank knows you entered the verification code for the Magnolia Bay transfer. You did not just let her use the iPad. You helped her bypass the security wall I built. There was a long silence on the line. Then, a sigh that sounded more exhausted than apologetic. I only helped her that one time, Diane said. Her voice was small, defensive. She was panicked. Violet, the venue was going to release the date. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe. She said she just needed a bridge loan until Caleb's bonus came in. I did not think it was stealing. I thought it was liquidity. Liquidity. I repeated the word. It tasted like bile. You authorized the theft of $5,000 because you could not stand to see Brielle cry. But when I told you I had $12 left to my name, you told me to stop being dramatic. She was struggling. Violet, Mom snapped, her tone hardening into that familiar self-righteousness. You do not understand the pressure she is under. You have always been the stable one. You have a career. You have savings. Brielle is... She is more delicate. She needed a win. I made a judgment call as a mother. You made a choice, I said. You chose her. You formed a coalition with her to rob me. It is not a coalition against you, she argued. We are a family. We do what we have to do to get everyone across the finish line. Why can you not see that? Because you pushed me off the track to carry her. I said. I hung up and drove away. That conversation broke something in me that I did not think could be broken further. It was the realization that in the ecosystem of the Green family, I was not a member. I was the fuel source. They burned me to keep Brielle warm. By Wednesday. The fallout from the demand letter and my conversation with Mom had metastasized. Brielle had stopped screaming at me directly and had begun a campaign of asymmetric warfare. She knew she could not win in court, so she decided to win in the court of public opinion. It started with a text from my cousin Sarah. Hey Vi, just heard from Brielle that you are refusing to pay for your bridesmaid dress alterations. I know things are tight, but do not ruin her vibe over $100. I can Venmo you if you are really that broke. I stared at the screen. Brielle had spun a narrative where I was the cheap, petty sister nickel-and-diming her over alterations, completely omitting the fact that she had stolen $28,000 from me. Then came a Facebook post from Aunt Martha. It did not name me, but it did not have to. So sad when jealousy tears siblings apart. A wedding should be a time of joy. not a time for people to keep score. Prayers for my niece Brielle, who is dealing with so much negativity right now. She was painting me as the villain. She was projecting her own greed onto me, labeling me as the one who cared too much about money, while she was the one spending thousands of dollars she did not earn. But the final straw came on Thursday evening. Ethan walked into the living room, his face pale with a mixture of anger and confusion. He held out his phone. "Your mother just texted me," he said. I took the phone. The message was long, a wall of gray text. "Ethan, I know Violet is in a bad place right now mentally. She's been fixating on these financial misunderstandings and blowing them out of proportion. We are worried about her stability. She is threatening to sue her own sister days before the wedding. Please, for her sake, try to talk some sense into her. She is going to embarrass herself and lose her family. We just want her to be happy, but she is making it very hard to love her right now." I read it twice. Making it very hard to love her. They were trying to isolate me. They were trying to plant seeds of doubt in the mind of the one person who stood by me. They were gaslighting Ethan, trying to make him believe that my reaction to grand larceny was a symptom of mental instability. I dropped the phone on the couch and sank to the floor. I pulled my knees to my chest and buried my face in my hands. The weight of it was crushing. It was not just the money anymore. It was the systematic erasure of my reality. They were rewriting history in real time, and they had the numbers, the aunts, the cousins, the family friends to make their version the truth. "Violet," Ethan said, kneeling beside me. He put a hand on my back. "I do not believe them. You know that, right? They are winning." I sobbed into my knees. "They are going to get away with it because they are louder. They are going to have this perfect wedding, and everyone is going to look at me and see the jealous sister who tried to ruin it. I am going to lose my money, and I am going to lose my reputation." I cried until my throat was raw. I cried for the little girl who just wanted her mother to protect her. I cried for the bride I wanted to be. Ethan just held me, letting the storm pass. But storms do eventually pass, and what is left behind is usually stripped clean and hard. I woke up Friday morning before the alarm. The sun was just starting to turn the sky a bruised purple. I lay in bed and listened to the silence. The tears were gone. The panic was gone. In their place was a cold, crystalline clarity. They wanted a villain, and if standing up for myself made me the bad guy, then I would be the most efficient, ruthless villain they had ever encountered. I would not scream. I would not argue on Facebook. I would play the role they had assigned me, but I would rewrite the ending. I got up, showered, and put on my work clothes. I checked my email. There was a secure message from the bank. "Ms. Green, regarding your fraud claim, the preliminary investigation has substantiated the unauthorized nature of the transfers. We are proceeding with the recovery process. However, given the familial connection, we are required to inform you that if the other account holder refuses to authorize the reversal, this will proceed to a legal dispute. We have frozen the remaining assets in the account, totaling $12. It was a small victory, but a vital one. The bank was on my side. The law was on my side. I drove to the bridal salon for the final fitting. Brielle had demanded I be there to learn how to bustle her train. I walked in with my head high, a polite smile plastered on my face. Brielle was standing on the pedestal, surrounded by 3 other bridesmaids. She looked majestic in the gown that my labor had purchased. She saw me in the mirror and smirked. "Oh, look who decided to show up," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I thought you were too busy counting pennies." The bridesmaids giggled. They were uncomfortable, but they followed the bride's lead. "I am here to help," I said simply. "Show me the bustle." I knelt behind her, my hands working the delicate hooks and eyes of the train. I was literally at her feet. It was the perfect visual metaphor for our relationship. "You see," I heard Brielle whisper to her friend Jessica, who was standing just to the right. "I told you she would fold. She sent that lawyer letter just to scare me. She won't actually do anything." "Are you sure?" Jessica whispered back. "That letter sounded serious." "Violet is all bark and no bite. Brielle scoffed. She is terrified of looking bad. She would rather die than make a scene in front of Daddy or Caleb's parents. She will suck it up, smile for the photos, and we will deal with the money thing in, 5 years. Or never. My hands paused on the silk. She is terrified of looking bad. That was it. That was the key I had been missing. Brielle did not fear the lawsuit because she thought she could out-manipulate me in private. She did not fear the debt because she had no concept of financial responsibility. What she feared, the only thing she truly feared, was the cracking of the porcelain doll image she presented to the world. She thought my silence was weakness. She thought my fear of making a scene was a permanent leash she could hold. I finished the bustle and stood up. I looked at my sister in the mirror. She was beaming at herself, the picture of a perfect, adored bride. "All done," I said. "It looks perfect." "I know," Brielle said. I walked out of the salon and sat in my car. I picked up my phone and called Marianne Holt. "Marianne," I said when she answered, "I have made a decision." "Go on," she said. "You were right about the timing," I said. "If we serve her now, she spins it. If we serve her at the house, she hides it. I want to proceed with the plan for the 14th, but I want to make sure the process server knows exactly when to walk in." "When?" Marianne asked. "During the speeches," I said. "Right after I give mine." "You are going to give a speech?" Marianne asked, a note of surprise in her voice. "After everything?" "Oh yes," I said, watching Brielle walk out of the salon with her entourage, laughing at something Jessica said. "She wants me to play the supportive sister. She wants me to validate her. So I am going to give her exactly what she asked for. I am going to give a speech about truth, family, and the cost of love." I started the car. "She thinks I am afraid of a scene," I said to the empty air. "She is about to find out that I am not just part of the scene. I am the director." The midpoint was over. The victim was gone. The prosecutor had arrived. 5 days before the ceremony. The tension in the air was so thick, it felt like humidity before a hurricane. The timeline I had built on my dining room table was moving from the planning phase into the execution phase. But Brielle, operating in her bubble of delusion, decided to test the electric fence one last time. It was Tuesday evening. I was organizing the party favors for the bachelorette night, tiny bottles of artisanal tequila that cost $12 each when my phone buzzed. It was a request from Brielle via Venmo. Brielle Green requests $350 for emergency limo upgrade bachelorette sashes. I stared at the notification. The audacity was breathtaking. She was currently facing a legal demand letter for stealing nearly $30,000, yet she felt comfortable asking me for another $350. She truly believed that my role as maid of honor superseded my role as her victim. She believed that the social pressure to perform would force my wallet open. I declined the request. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. "Why did you decline it?" Brielle snapped. She sounded breathless, likely running around a mall somewhere. "The limo company said they need the cash tip up front if we want the neon lights inside. And I saw these custom sashes that are perfect. Just send it. Violet. I will add it to the tab I owe you." "The tab you owe me is $28,000, I said, my voice flat. "I am not giving you $350 for neon lights." "Oh my God. Stop being so petty," she screamed. "It is my bachelorette party. You are the maid of honor. It is your job to handle the small stuff." "You are ruining the vibe. Violet, you are making everything so difficult." "I am not making it difficult," I said. "I am making it solvent. I do not have the money. Brielle, you spent it all on your honeymoon upgrade." "I hate you," she hissed. "You are just jealous because I'm getting everything I wanted and you are sitting there alone with your spreadsheets." She hung up. I put the phone down. I did not feel angry. I felt validated. Every outburst, every demand, every insult was just another brick in the wall I was building around her. She was digging her own grave with a diamond-encrusted shovel. An hour later, there was a knock at my apartment door. I knew who it was before I opened it. Brielle called the cavalry whenever she met resistance. My mother stood in the hallway. She looked tired. Her eyes were red, and she was clutching her purse like a shield. She did not wait to be invited in. She walked past me into the living room and sat on the edge of the sofa, looking at the boxes of party favors. "Violet," she started, her voice trembling. "We need to stop this. Brielle called me in tears. She says you are refusing to help with the basic expenses. She says you are threatening to sue her." "I am not threatening," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I have retained counsel." The demand letter was real. "Mom, the deadline is tomorrow. If the money is not returned, the suit gets filed." Diane burst into tears. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times, designed to make me feel like a monster for having boundaries. "How can you do this?" she sobbed. "She is your sister. It is her wedding week. Do you know what this will do to the family?" "Your father? If he sees a lawsuit, it will break his heart. He thinks we are a good family. He thinks we take care of each other." "We do not take care of each other," I said. "You take care of Brielle, and I pay for it." "I am begging you," Diane said, reaching out to grab my hand. Her palms were clammy. Just wait until after the wedding. Let her have her day. Let her have her moment. I promise, on my life. We will figure out a payment plan afterwards. I will take a second mortgage. I will sell my jewelry. Just do not serve her papers now. Do not destroy the memory of her wedding." I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had taught me to tie my shoes, and who had also typed a 6-digit authorization code to drain my future. "I have a question for you," I said softly. Diane looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Anything, honey, anything." "If I had stolen Brielle's house fund," I asked, watching her face closely, "if I had taken $30,000 from her to pay for a vacation, and she wanted to sue me, would you be here begging her to stay silent? Would you be asking her to protect my feelings?" The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed. A car drove by outside. Diane opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked down at her lap. She twisted the strap of her purse. She did not answer. She did not have to. We both knew the answer. If I had stolen from Brielle, Diane would have driven Brielle to the police station herself. She would have called it tough love. She would have said I needed to learn a lesson. "That is what I thought," I said. "Please leave." "Mom." She stood up, wiping her eyes. The sadness in her face hardened into something cold and resentful. "You are hard, Violet. I do not know when you became so hard." "When you made me the bank," I said. She left. When Ethan came home, I told him about the visit. I could see the vein in his forehead pulsing. He was a patient man, a history teacher who dealt with unruly teenagers all day. But this was pushing him to a breaking point. "I am going to drive over there," he said, grabbing his keys. "I am going to tell them to stay away from you. This is harassment. They are emotionally terrorizing you to cover up a crime." "No," I said, grabbing his arm. "Ethan, stop." "Why?" he shouted, turning to me. "Why are we playing nice? They are predators. Violet, they are eating you alive." "Because if you go over there and scream at them," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm, "they win. They will tell everyone that you are abusive. They will tell everyone that I am being controlled by an angry, unstable man. They will use your anger to discredit my evidence. They will say, 'Oh, poor Violet. She is just doing what her crazy fiancé tells her to do.'" Ethan dropped his keys on the table. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing the room. "So we just take it?" he asked. "We let them come into our home and guilt-trip you. We endure it for 4 more days." I said, "We hold the line, because on Saturday, we are not going to scream. We are going to speak, and when we speak, we will have the full weight of the law behind us. If we explode now, we look like a family drama. If we wait, we look like justice." I went to my home office and locked the door. I needed to focus. I opened the safe in the corner. I took out the dossier I had prepared for Marianne Holt. It was thick. It contained the notarized affidavit from the bank. It contained the printed text messages where Brielle admitted to the debt. It contained the email from the travel agent. I scanned everything one last time. I sent the final digital copies to Marianne. Me. The deadline has passed. They have not paid. Marianne understood. The complaint is drafted. The process server is booked for Saturday evening. His name is Mr. Kincaid. He will be dressed as a guest. He knows the signal. Thank you. The next day was the rehearsal dinner. It was held at a seafood restaurant by the harbor. I wore a navy blue dress and a polite smile. I sat where I was told. I clinked my glass when appropriate. I found myself standing near the bar, waiting for a club soda. When Caleb Ward approached me, Caleb was Brielle's fiancé. He was a decent man, an internal accountant for a manufacturing firm. He was quiet, kind, and completely out of his depth with the green women. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes that matched mine. "Hey, Violet," he said, ordering a beer. "Thanks for, everything. Brielle says you have been a huge help with the logistics this week." "I do what I can," I said. He took a long sip of his beer. "Man, weddings are expensive. Right, I tried to tell Brielle we should scale back. Maybe skip the massive floral arch. But she was set on it. She said you guys had some family funds that were covering the extras. That was really generous of your parents." I froze. My hand tightened around my glass. "Family funds," I repeated. "Yeah," Caleb said, looking at me with genuine gratitude. "I mean, we are stretching it on my salary as it is. When she said your mom and you pitched in from a family trust or something, it really saved us. I wanted to thank you." He did not know. He honestly did not know. Brielle had lied to him too. She had told him the stolen money was a gift from a non-existent family trust. She had made him an accessory to spending stolen funds without his knowledge. I looked at this man. He was about to marry a woman who lay as easily as she breathed. I felt a surge of pity for him. He was walking into a buzzsaw. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and say, "Run. She stole my life savings. There is no trust fund." But I couldn't. If I told him now, he would confront her tonight. She would cry. She would lie. She would say I was jealous. She would manipulate him back into submission before the sun came up. And then she would hide the assets. I needed the shock. I needed the public exposure to break the spell. "Caleb," I said carefully, "you are a numbers guy, right?" "Yeah," he smiled weakly. "Spreadsheets are my life." "Just keep your eyes on the numbers," I said. "Always check the source." He looked confused. But before he could ask what I meant, Brielle swooped in. She was wearing a white cocktail dress and a smile that did not reach her eyes. "There you are," she chirped, linking her arm through Caleb's. "Violet, stop boring him with talk about work. Oh, I have an ask." She turned to me, her expression shifting to that faux sweetness she used when she wanted something. "I was thinking," she said, "since we had that little rocky patch earlier in the week, and since you are the maid of honor, I want you to give a speech at the reception, a toast." "You want me to give a speech?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "I think it would be a really powerful symbol of reconciliation. Show everyone that we are sisters and we support each other. It would shut up Aunt Martha, too. She has been asking why you look so stiff." She was handing me the microphone. She was so arrogant, so convinced of my submission, that she was inviting me to take the stage. She thought I would get up there and spout platitudes about love and sisterhood because I was too cowardly to do anything else. "I would love to give a speech," I said. "Perfect." She clapped her hands. "Keep it sweet. Maybe tell that story about when we were kids and I braided your hair. People love that sentimental stuff." "I will write something memorable," I promised. She squeezed my arm and pulled Caleb away to greet more guests. I watched them go. I left the rehearsal dinner early. I went home and sat at my laptop. I opened a blank document. I did not write about hair braiding. I did not write about childhood games. I wrote about September 12th. I wrote about the wire transfers. I wrote about the text messages. I wrote a speech that was not designed to humiliate, but to clarify. I wrote a speech that would act as the opening statement for the lawsuit that Mr. Kincaid would deliver exactly 3 minutes after I dropped the microphone. I typed the final sentence. To the happy couple, may your marriage be as honest as the funding that paid for it. I closed the laptop. The pressure was gone. The fear was gone. I was not the victim anymore. I was the impending consequence. Tomorrow was the wedding. Brielle expected a coronation. She was going to get a deposition. The air inside the Magnolia Bay event hall smelled of white lilies and expensive perfume, a scent that I will forever associate with the specific nausea of betrayal. The venue was undeniably magnificent. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the bay, where the sunset was currently painting the water in shades of violet and gold, a cosmic irony that did not escape me. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen tears, casting a soft, flattering glow over the 200 guests who had gathered to celebrate the union of Brielle Green and Caleb Ward. Everywhere I looked, I saw my bank account. I did not see a floral archway draped in cascading orchids and imported roses. I saw the $3,000 that should have been in my high-yield savings account. I did not see the string quartet playing a gentle rendition of a pop song in the corner. I saw the $1,200 I had set aside for a rainy day. I did not see the open bar stocked with top-shelf liquor. I saw the down payment for the house Ethan and I would now have to wait 2 more years to buy. I stood near the entrance of the ballroom, clutching my bouquet of white hydrangeas. My knuckles were white. The navy blue bridesmaid dress fit perfectly, thanks to the alterations I had paid for myself, but it felt like a costume. I was an undercover agent in enemy territory, disguised as a supportive sister. Brielle swept past me, a vision in white lace and silk. She looked stunning. I could not deny that. She had the glow of a woman who had gotten exactly what she wanted. She paused for a moment, her veil floating around her like a halo, and leaned in close to my ear. "See," she whispered, her voice low and dripping with triumph. "I am still radiant. The world did not end just because you threw a tantrum." She pulled back and smiled, a dazzling, camera-ready smile that did not reach her cold eyes. "Try to look happy, Violet," she added. "You are bringing down the property value of the photos." She floated away to greet a table of our cousins, laughing as if she had not spent the last week terrorizing me and my mother. She was confident. She was untouchable. She believed that the ceremony was the finish line and that she had already won the race. She believed that the social contract of a wedding, the unspoken rule that everyone must be polite and joyful, was a shield strong enough to protect her from the penal code. I watched her go. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. It was the beat of a countdown. I moved through the room, ghosting past relatives who offered me polite congratulations on my sister's big day. I nodded. I smiled. I accepted glasses of champagne from passing waiters and set them down on tables without taking a sip. I needed a clear head. I saw my mother, Diane, standing near the gift table. She was wearing a silver gown that I knew cost $600 because I had seen the charge on the credit card statement I had intercepted. She was talking to Aunt Martha, but her eyes were darting around the room nervously. When her gaze landed on me, she flinched. She quickly looked away, pretending to be fascinated by the calligraphy on a seating card. She was terrified. Good. She should be. My father, Gavin, approached me. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, a proud father of the bride. He knew nothing of the theft. He knew nothing of the fraud affidavit or the demand letter. To him, this was just a beautiful day funded by his wife's thrifty retirement planning and his daughter's impeccable taste. He placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Violet," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "You look nice." "Thanks, Dad," I said. He leaned in closer, his tone shifting. "Your mother tells me you have been a little difficult this week, struggling with jealousy." I stiffened. So that was the story Diane had fed him. "I just want to say," he continued, squeezing my shoulder a little too hard, "do not make a scene tonight. This is your sister's moment. Do not embarrass the family because you are feeling left behind. We are Greens. We keep our chin up. I have no intention of embarrassing the family. Dad, I said, looking him straight in the eye, I intend to show everyone exactly who we are. He mistook my words for agreement. He patted my shoulder and walked away to get a scotch. I watched him go, feeling a pang of sadness. He was about to be blindsided, but he was also the man who had let Diane coddle Brielle for 30 years, creating the monster that had eventually devoured my savings. He was not innocent. He was just negligent. I made my way to the head table. The seating chart placed me right next to the groom. Caleb was sitting there, looking slightly dazed, loosening his tie. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey, Violet," he said. "This is insane, right? I can't believe it is actually happening." "It is quite a production," I said, sitting down. "I really wanted to thank you again," Caleb said earnestly. "Brielle told me you handled the last-minute vendor payments. I know it was stressful. You are a lifesaver. Seriously. We could not have pulled off this level of luxury without your help." He gestured to the room, to the crystal, to the flowers. "You have no idea," I said softly. I felt a twinge of guilt looking at him. He was a good man. He worked hard. He was marrying a woman who had lied to him about the fundamental financing of their life together. He thought he was marrying into a supportive family. He was marrying into a crime scene, but I pushed the guilt away. If I stayed silent, he would be financially, legally bound to a fraudster for the rest of his life. The truth would hurt him tonight, but it would save him a lifetime of debt. I looked out into the crowd. The lights were dim now, casting the room in a romantic twilight. At table 9, near the back, sat a woman in a sharp black suit. She was not on the original guest list. I had added her as my +1 at the last minute. Marianne Holt, my attorney. She caught my eye and gave a barely perceptible nod. She was sipping water, her phone resting on the table next to her hand. 2 tables away from her sat a man I did not know personally, but whose face I had memorized from a photograph Marianne had sent me. Mr. Kincaid. He was dressed in a gray suit that blended perfectly with the other guests. He looked like a distant uncle or a colleague from work, but under his jacket, in an inside pocket, was a thick envelope of legal documents. He was eating his salad calmly. He was waiting for the signal. Then I found Ethan. He was sitting at table 4 with some of our mutual friends. He was watching me. He was not eating. He was not drinking. He was just watching me, his expression intense and focused. When our eyes locked, he did not smile. He nodded. One slow, deliberate nod. It was not a nod of encouragement for revenge. It was a nod of validation. He was reminding me that I was not crazy. He was reminding me that I was not difficult or jealous. He was reminding me that I was a woman who had been wronged and who had every right to reclaim her life. The dinner service began. Waiters in white jackets moved in synchronized waves. Placing plates of filet mignon and lobster tail in front of the guests, I looked at the lobster. That was my overtime pay from last November. Brielle leaned over to me, clinking her glass against mine. "Cheer up," she hissed under her breath. "You look like you are at a funeral." "Just thinking about the speech," I said. "Oh, right," she beamed, turning back to the room. "Make sure you mention how much I love Caleb, and keep it under 5 minutes. People want to dance." The room buzzed with conversation. Laughter floated up to the high ceilings. It was a perfect wedding. It was a masterpiece of deception. Then, the house lights dimmed further. A spotlight swept across the room and landed on the small stage where the band was set up. The MC, a man with a booming radio voice and a shiny tuxedo, stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we hope you are enjoying the dinner. Now, we have a very special moment. The maid of honor, the bride's beloved sister, Violet Green, would like to say a few words to toast the happy couple." Applause broke out. Polite, enthusiastic applause. Brielle clapped the loudest, turning to me with a smug, expectant look. She thought this was it. She thought this was the moment of my total capitulation. She thought I would stand up, choke back my pride, and publicly validate her theft with a teary tribute to sisterhood. I stood up. My legs felt solid. My hands were steady. I walked to the stage. The spotlight followed me, blindingly bright. I could not see the faces in the crowd anymore. Just a sea of shadows. But I knew where Brielle was. I knew exactly where she was sitting. I stepped up to the microphone stand. I adjusted the height. The feedback whined for a split second, then settled into silence. I looked down at the piece of paper in my hand. I did not need it. I had memorized every word. I had written it in the fire of my anger and refined it in the ice of my resolve. The room went quiet. 200 people waited. I looked at Brielle. She was smiling, tilting her head, playing the role of the adoring sister. She looked so safe. She looked so protected by the social conventions she had weaponized against me. I took a breath. The air was cool in my lungs. I leaned into the microphone. "Today," I said, my voice ringing clear and steady through the massive hall, "I am here to give my sister exactly what she took from me." I paused. The silence was absolute. "Truth. When we were children," I began, my voice soft and slightly trembling, drawing the audience in. "Brielle used to tell me that sisters were two halves of the same soul. She used to say that what belonged to one of us belonged to both of us. I remember when I was 10 years old and scraped my knee on the playground asphalt. She gave me her own bandage because she said my pain was her pain. It is a beautiful sentiment. It is the kind of love that poets write about. It is the kind of bond that is supposed to be unbreakable." I looked out at the guests. They were smiling. Some of the aunts were dabbing their eyes with napkins. Brielle was beaming, clutching Caleb's hand, looking every inch the beloved sister. She nodded at me, encouraging me to continue, confident that I was weaving a tapestry of affection that would cover all her sins. "But as we grow older," I continued, my tone shifting almost imperceptibly, "we learn that boundaries are just as important as bonds. We learn that love is not about possession, and I learned, quite recently, a very hard lesson." I paused. The room was silent. The smile on Brielle's face faltered just a fraction. "I learned that family is not a license to withdraw from the future of another person," I said clearly. "I learned that being a sister does not grant you the right to access a bank account that does not belong to you." The air in the room changed instantly. It was as if someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the hall. The smiles on the guests' faces froze. Brielle dropped Caleb's hand. I reached into the pocket of my dress. I did not pull out a tissue. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. "For the past month," I said, my voice gaining strength, projecting to the back of the room where my lawyer sat, "I have been told that I am jealous. I have been told that I am petty. I have been told that I should be honored to contribute to this beautiful day. And looking around at this room, at the crystal chandeliers and the imported orchids, I can see where my contribution went." I unfolded the paper. "On September 12th at 10 in the morning," I read, "a transfer of $5,000 was made from my personal savings account. At 10:45 that same morning, a deposit of exactly $5,000 was paid to Magnolia Bay Event Hall." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw my father, Gavin, stand up halfway, his face confused. "On September 15th, I continued, relentless, $2,000 was taken. That same day, Gilded Lens Photography received a retainer of $2,000. "Violet, stop it," Brielle hissed, standing up. Her face was flushing a deep, angry red. "Sit down. You are drunk." "I am stone-cold sober." "Brielle," I said, looking directly at her. "On September 20th, $3,500 was withdrawn. That was the day you received the confirmation email for the Butler Suite upgrade in St. Lucia. I have the email. I have the bank logs. And I have the text message from you, dated October 3rd, where you admitted to using the family resources because Mom said it was fine." I looked at my mother. Diane was pale, her hand covering her mouth, shrinking back into her chair. "That is right," I said to the room. My mother, Diane Green, authorized the use of her device to bypass the security protocols I had set up. She helped my sister steal $28,450 from the fund I had saved for my own wedding and my first home. The room was in chaos now. People were whispering loudly. Caleb was staring at Brielle, his mouth slightly open, looking like he had been struck by lightning. "You are lying," Brielle screamed, her voice shrill and ugly, shattering the elegance of the evening. "It was a gift. You gave it to me. You are just trying to humiliate me." "I did not give it to you," I said calmly. "And neither did the bank." I looked at the piece of paper again. "As of this morning," I announced, "the fraud department of my bank has completed their investigation. They verified that the access was unauthorized and violated the terms of the joint account holder agreement. They have initiated a reversal of the funds where possible, and they have flagged the activity as identity theft and fraud. My money is coming back to me. Brielle, not because you gave it back, but because the law took it back." I looked at Mr. Kincaid. He stood up from table 11. He buttoned his jacket. He picked up the manila envelope that had been resting by his plate. "You invited me here to be your maid of honor because you thought it would keep me quiet," I said, my voice shaking with the release of weeks of suppressed rage. "You thought if you put me in a dress and gave me a bouquet, I would be too polite to scream. You thought I was the same little sister who would give you her bandage on the playground." Mr. Kincaid walked toward the head table. The click of his shoes on the dance floor was audible in the stunned silence. "But I am not that girl anymore," I said. "I am not a resource. I am not an ATM. And I am not asking for permission to exist anymore." Mr. Kincaid reached the head table. He did not look at the guests. He looked only at the bride and her mother. "Brielle Green," he said, his voice professional and devoid of emotion. "Diane Green." He placed 2 thick packets of documents on the white tablecloth. "Right next to the wedding cake, you have been served with a civil complaint for conversion, fraud, and unjust enrichment," Mr. Kincaid said. "You have 30 days to respond to the court." He turned and walked away. The silence that followed was heavy, almost physical. It was broken by Brielle. She picked up the papers and threw them on the floor. "Get out!" she screamed, pointing at me. She looked deranged, her veil askew, her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "You ruined my wedding. You jealous, bitter witch. I hate you, Daddy. Make her leave." My father, Gavin, rushed the stage. But he did not look at Brielle. He looked at me. His face was purple with rage. "Have you lost your mind?" he shouted at me, grabbing the microphone stand. "You do this in front of our friends, in front of my business partners. You have disgraced this family over money. You destroyed your sister's reputation over money." I looked at him. I looked at the man I had respected my whole life. He did not ask if it was true. He did not ask if they stole from me. He only cared that I had exposed the rot. "They stole $30,000, Dad," I said quietly. "If you think my silence is worth more than my livelihood, then I have disgraced nothing but your ego." I turned to Caleb. He was standing now. He was looking at the papers on the floor. He was looking at Brielle, who was currently sobbing into her mother's shoulder, screaming about how unfair the world was. "Caleb," I said. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, terrified. "I am sorry," I said. "But you are an accountant. You know what joint liability looks like. You deserve to know that this wedding, the flowers, the food, the dress, was paid for with the proceeds of fraud. You deserve to know exactly what you are signing your name to." Brielle looked up, her mascara running down her cheeks. "Caleb, baby, don't listen to her. She is crazy. She is lying. We will fix it. Mom and I will fix it." Caleb looked at Brielle. Then he looked at Diane, who was unable to meet his gaze. Then he looked at the expensive venue that was suddenly looking very cheap. He reached for the microphone. I stepped back to let him take it. He did not scream. He did not cry. He was a man of numbers, and he had just realized the equation did not balance. I Caleb started. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. I need a moment. Actually, I need more than a moment. Caleb, Brielle whispered, her voice trembling. I cannot do this, Caleb said, his voice gaining a sudden, horrified clarity. I cannot sign a marriage license today, not with legal papers on the cake table, not if there is a fraud investigation. Caleb, Brielle shrieked, grabbing his arm. It is just a misunderstanding. We are getting married. No, Caleb said, pulling his arm away. He looked sick. If you stole this money, if you lied to me about the trust fund, what else is a lie I am not marrying into a lawsuit? Brielle, I am sorry. He put the microphone down. He turned and walked off the stage. He did not go to Brielle. He walked straight toward the exit, loosening his tie as if he was suffocating. Caleb, come back, Brielle screamed, collapsing onto the floor in a heap of tulle and lace. Violet, look what you did. You killed him. You killed my life. Diane was wailing now, clutching Brielle. My father was standing there, helpless, watching the groom walk out the door. The guests were standing up, the murmur turning into a roar of gossip and shock. I felt a hand on my waist. It was Ethan. He had come up to the stage while everyone was watching Caleb. Ready, he asked. I am ready, I said. I did not look at my sister sobbing on the floor. I did not look at my mother who had chosen her favorite child and lost everything. I did not look at my father who cared more about appearances than integrity. I placed the microphone back on the stand. It made a final, decisive thud. I took Ethan's hand, and we walked down the stairs of the stage. We walked down the center aisle, past the rows of stunned guests. I held my head high. I did not run. I walked. I walked out of the Magnolia Bay event hall and into the cool night air. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of salt and freedom. It smelled like a future that was finally, completely mine. 6 months later, the wind on the beach near Harborstone was brisk, but the sun was warm. There were no crystal chandeliers here. There were no imported orchids. There was just a wooden arch draped with wildflowers we had bought from the local farmer's market. There were only 20 people in attendance, our closest friends, Ethan's parents, Marianne Holt, who was sitting in the front row, smiling. There was no Brielle. There was no Diane. There was no Gavin. We had not spoken since the night at Magnolia Bay. The lawsuit had been settled out of court 3 months ago. My mother had taken a second mortgage to pay me back in full, plus legal fees, to avoid a trial that would have ruined their social standing forever. Caleb had never returned. The last I heard, he had transferred to a branch in another state. I stood in my dress, a simple white slip dress that cost $200. I looked at Ethan. He looked handsome in his linen suit. Violet, I said, my voice steady and full of joy. Take you, Ethan, to be my husband. It was not a perfect wedding by the standards of a bridal magazine, but as we kissed, and our small group of friends cheered, I realized it was the most perfect moment of my life. I looked out at the ocean. I thought about the girl who used to give away her bandages. She was gone. In her place was a woman who knew that the only people who deserve a seat at your table are the ones who bring love. Not an appetite. I did not win because my sister lost. I did not win because her wedding imploded or because she was humiliated. I won because I stopped letting them define my value. I won because, for the first time in 34 years, the account balance of my self-worth was full, and I held the only key. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please comment down below with your location. Let's connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Helena Revenge Stories, like the video, and support us further by pressing the hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.